Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing podcast. Each week, John Kasman interviews multifamily and marketing experts to teach you how to find the best places to invest, attract investors, and grow your portfolio. You are listening to Target Market Insights with your host, John Kasman.
Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing show. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Now, if you're enjoying this show, do me a favor and let us know about it, and let other people know by simply leaving us a review and a rating. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now, today we're going to be talking to Todd Thorpe. Todd began his telecommunications career in 1989, working for companies like Cablevision, US Exchange, and Charter Communications. Prior to joining MDU Consulting Group, he was the director of MDU sales for Spectrum Community Solutions, where he oversaw multifamily and HOA operations in the Midwest and Southeast regions. A well-respected industry veteran, Todd's areas of expertise include right of entry contract negotiation, as well as a smart community design utilizing a bunch of acronyms: FTTU, IoT, OTT, IPTV, and managed Wi-Fi. He's going to have to explain what all of that means. Let's welcome to the show, Todd Thorpe.
Thank you, John. Yeah, we can kind of spell those out. It's a world of tons of crazy acronyms, but thank you.
Absolutely. Well, listen, before we jump into all of that, why don't you take a minute and give us a little bit more context on your background?
Sure. Well. Again, first of all, I just want to thank you for having me on and giving me the opportunity to kind of give your listeners some steps and some value as it relates to this area in multifamily. Like my bio said, I've been in cable for about 30 years, and most of what those 30 years made up was primarily in the MDU space, and that's another acronym. MDU stands for multi-dwelling unit, so that's the multifamily space, and primarily in multifamily sales and negotiating agreements with the cable providers to service multifamily properties. Whether you have one property or you have a portfolio of 50 properties, you might have a few hundred units, you might have thousands of units. So that's what I've spent most of my career on. And I segued from the corporate world, got tired of the corporate world, been doing that for so long, and segued over into consulting about a year ago, and absolutely love it. And we'll never go back.
Awesome, man. Well, congratulations on that transition into consulting and kind of having more flexibility there outside of being in corporate America. But you have done a lot of stuff, in the corporate space, and you talked about MDUs, those multi-dwelling units, really, commercial properties, whether that is a big condo building or a multifamily property. For the purpose of our conversation, just for context there, are we talking about, small multifamily, medium size, large multifamilies? What kind of range are we looking at there?
Yeah, so very good question, John. So primarily what the cable company and the phone companies, Charter, Comcast, AT&T, Verizon, some of the other lower tier providers, they're looking to secure that property and keep the competitor out. So what they're looking at are properties that are primarily 50 units and above. Those are the properties that they covet the most. Anything that's below that, typically they're not too concerned over. Not that they don't want to lose a 40-unit property, but for this conversation and for what we do primarily, our clients are usually companies who own properties that are 50 units and above. They might own several properties. They might own a portfolio and have 30,000 units. So our clients kind of range from large and small. But as far as the property size, for your listeners, you want to be focusing on how can I make sure that if I own a property that is 62 units, or I have several properties, do I have a contract? We'll get into that. Is it actually secure? But more importantly, am I generating ancillary revenue from that property in addition to the revenue that I'm getting from my residents and my tenants. And just besides size, I think the other thing that we want to keep in mind and make sure your listeners understand is in the multifamily space, from our standpoint, that includes not only traditional apartments. When you think of multifamily, it could be student housing, it could be mobile home communities, RV parks, marinas, student housing, nursing homes, assisted living, and even your gated HOA private communities. And when I say gated, that's more of a figurative term. It doesn't literally mean that there's a gate surrounding it, but it's a private community that's run by an HOA or a condo association.
Yeah, so basically what we're looking at here, you said around 50 plus units, and really it's because the telecommunication companies are trying to block out competitors, right? So they're
Exactly.
trying to,
Yep.
make sure that they, especially these larger properties, because they're more valuable, they're more profitable for
Yep.
them to get these contracts. So they work with people like yourself to create relationships. So they are really the main provider for telecommunication services in these properties.
Correct.
Now you mentioned 50 units and up. Before the folks who are not focusing on 50 and up, just turn off this episode. I do want to say there are some things that we can learn even from this for some of those smaller properties.
Correct.
The way we should think about this is really when we look at, the income and the expenses, our goal in multifamily investing is always to create more value, to increase the NOI. And typically we think about that through rent, but looking at other income, other line items that we can impact, that's another way. So maybe we can start by just talking about that philosophy at a high level for anyone in multifamily, particularly 5+ units that are valued based on the NOI.
Yep.
What are some things we can do and look at to try to increase the NOI without touching rent necessarily?
Very good point. And I do want to stress that if you have a property that's under 50 units, it doesn't mean that none of this information applies or would be valuable to you. You may have a property that is 22 units, and then you may have several properties that are higher. But properties that are below that 50 unit range, one thing that you want to keep in mind is that the providers, what they're looking for is guaranteed revenue. And the way that they can guarantee revenue is by you subscribing to bulk cable and internet service for that property. So you may have a 20 unit property. If you subscribe to bulk cable and TV internet, John, that simply would mean that you would buy in bulk, just like going to Sam's Club or Costco. You would buy bulk cable and or internet from the cable company at a drastically reduced rate, and that could be 50 to 75% below what the retail rate is. You offer that as an amenity to your residents, to those 24 units. You can advertise free cable, free internet, receive an upfront commission, which is called a door fee or a one-time payment for that, and we can talk about those. That's very, very valuable. And now you have just increased your NOI by getting ancillary revenue that didn't exist before by offering an amenity to your residents. And the other thing that's important to remember is that you're also able to advertise free cable or free internet at your property. Now you have something that's valuable that maybe your competitor, your property across the street or the one across town, it might be about the same same size, same class, C or a B class asset, but they don't have free cable and you do. Well, where do you think that resident's going to go? They don't have to worry about getting their cable, their internet set up. They can just move into your apartment and it's way more turnkey. Then at the end of the day, you're able to retain your residents, so your retention goes up, and the experience that resident has typically is more positive than, say, a property where they don't offer bulk or internet service.
No, great points there. I mean, obviously, if you can negotiate with the companies to get a bulk rate, even if it's just discounted, that's going to be more valuable. And then you can turn around
Huge.
and offer that as a service where you're offering free internet, free rent, or free cable.
Yep.
That's going to stand out, and right now, I think in today's market, you have to find ways to stand out, especially if you're in one of those tough markets, if you're in the Class A sector where, I mean, I'm seeing people advertise all sorts of things right now to try to drive occupancy. So think about ways to offer an amenity or something that also drives the NOI at the bottom line. So that's really compelling there.
Yep.
And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about telecommunications, but there are other avenues we'll get into. So you can think about laundry income the same way. You can think about, vending machines. There are a lot of other value add revenue generating amenities that we can add to our properties that can drive the bottom line, but also provide some value to the resident. So let's talk about cable internet specifically, since that's your primary area of expertise. So when we think about this, I think just to start at the beginning, really, I think some people would be surprised to know that you can actually, as a property owner, you can get paid by the internet and cable companies for giving them access to your property. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So, and this goes back, so probably about how I really got into the multifamily area in the cable business. If you rewind the tape and go back, say 15, 20 years, the thought, the mentality was, well, the cable company is already here. The phone company already provides service to my property. They've been here forever. I'm just going to let them serve my residents. I'm going to let them come in. I might end up having a bad experience, but I'll kind of put up with that because I don't really have any other option or any other choice. And you kind of limp along, right? So what happened is probably about 15 years ago, you really started to see an importance of that relationship between the cable provider and the phone provider as well, and the property owner become more of instead of a handshake, kind of a gentleman's agreement type thing, to be a really more of an official legal relationship. And the owner can insist, and the law permits this, that the cable provider sign a contract in order to provide service to the property. Now, there are 19 states that are called mandatory access states. And I call these are catch-22 states. But in a mandatory access state, as long as a resident requests service, the owner has to allow the provider on site to provide service. However, and this is where education comes in, and a lot of owners don't realize this, is they have the legal right to say, all right, provider, come on site, provide service to our residents. However, I'm going to give exclusive use of all the internal wiring because I own it to this company over here. And I'm going to give them exclusive marketing rights. So while the owner is obeying the law and allowing that provider to come on site, they're also within the law to grant any provider they want exclusive use of their internal wiring. And by they, I mean the owner's internal wiring. They own it. All that coax cable and phone cable behind the sheetrock, the owner owns. So think of it this way, John. If you control the highway and you've been letting people drive on your highway for free forever, and the roads are getting tore up, you want a way to monetize that. So you put up a toll booth and say, you know what, from here on out, you can drive my road, but you're going to pay me a toll for access to this road. It's kind of the same concept. You as a multifamily owner, and this is true whether you own 19 units or you own 19,000 units, you have the legal right to require that that provider sign an agreement. And typically that's an easement. You're granting an easement to the provider to cross your property to come in and serve your residents. Different than a single family home, because a single family home has public right of ways and access, and you as that single family owner are going to sign a work order to have cable installed and off you go. As a multifamily property owner, you own that property and the land that that property sits on. There's a parcel of land, and that easement is recorded to that parcel of land, that legal description. And that agreement now spells out in writing what both parties agree to. And both parties would have to agree to, the owner agreeing to maybe exclusive wiring and marketing in exchange for the cable company paying them compensation to be on the property, or provide bulk services to the owner and also pay them compensation on top of that. It sets an expectation of behavior that now, instead of this handshake that took place 20 years ago, now there's a clear in writing what the expectation is on both parties.
And I mean, obviously there's some legal items that you have to go through as far as the easements and everything you talked about. Using your analogy of the freeway, Joe Schmo could just walk up and decide to put a toll in the middle of the highway, right? So
right.
Certainly there's some legalities that you have to work through there. As you go through that, I guess one question is, how common is this process for owners to go through this? Is this something that the telecommunication companies expect? Is this kind of a one-off thing? And then also, what kind of compensation are we looking at?
Yep.
Because obviously there's a lot of work involved here to have these kind of conversations, get these contracts and agreements in place. What kind of profit do we expect to drive by doing this?
So two good questions. I'll take the first part. So there are plenty of very stellar telecommunications attorneys or attorneys out there, legal counsel, who specialize in this. And you as an owner may also have an attorney who is very well versed at this. As a consultant, I'm very well versed at kind of what you can and can't do. I'm not an attorney, but I always say I can play one on TV. So you want to, first of all, understand what those laws are, what you can and can't do. But you, as at the heart of it, as an owner, you do have the legal right to tell a provider that we're going to have a contract if you're going to provide service to my property. And these are the items that I'm going to agree to. I will grant you exclusive wiring. I'll grant you exclusive marketing and things like that. But you're going to compensate me for that. So you want to make sure that you are following the right rules. And if you don't know, reach out to an attorney who maybe understands those things better. Reach out to a consultant. Talk to your peers. In this industry, and John, talking to you and other investors out there, it's a real kind of a very close-knit group, and everybody talks and everybody knows each other. Talk to your peers, because maybe they've been doing this as well. It doesn't mean that you have to go outside and hire somebody to do this, as long as you understand what you can and can't do. On the compensation side, it comes back to, you don't know what you don't know. So if you don't ask and you just automatically assume, well, I have to let the cable provider come on site because they've always been here, the cable provider and the phone providers are going to maybe take advantage of that, and they'll sign a contract, but they're not going to pay you any money. Or, they will try to do this so it's one-sided for them, and it's not a win-win for both parties. As far as compensation goes, well, let me just step back for a second. In the industry, providers and I kind of lump them all together, whether it's Charter, Comcast, AT&T, Verizon, all of them. What they covet the most is guaranteed revenue from those residents. And the best way they can do that is through a bulk video or a bulk internet or a managed Wi-Fi agreement, because that means they're going to get guaranteed revenue for the term of that contract in exchange for you giving them access to those residents. And in virtually all cases, they'll pay you for that, right? So that's the first thing you want to ask yourself is, do I want to look at bulk or do I want to look at non-bulk? So that's a big thing that you want to decide right up front, because the providers would prefer a bulk agreement over a non-bulk agreement. And they both have their pluses and minuses, and a lot of it has to do with what you want. As an owner, what is your business model? Student housing and senior properties, nursing homes, assisted living, you see bulk cable and internet is way more prevalent than traditional, because just by nature, my kids, when they were in college, the internet was already, free at their apartment or in the dorm. When you go into a nursing home, it's very common to have those Wi-Fi hotspots throughout the assisted living. And we used to do deals even in small nursing homes, right, that are only, 40 beds, right? So it doesn't have to be a 400-bed facility. So you want to decide, do you want to be a bulk or non-bulk? So that's a really big deciding factor.
And with that, just to clarify, on the bulk, that makes sense. You're basically buying it for the entire building, right?
Correct.
And then when you do that, you are either giving it free or you're charging a separate,
amenity
cable fee or whatever, amenity fee to the residents. Well, if
Correct.
you do non-bulk, that's just access. How do you monetize that as an owner?
So you're going to monetize them both ways. Both of them at their core, you're allowing the provider access via an easement. So the instrument, the document, the paper, the contract, if you will, is always going to be an easement, whether you are offering bulk service or not. So because of that, you are entitled to an upfront, what's called a door fee, typically upfront payment. That can be anywhere from, say, $50 a door on up to, we've negotiated $400 a door for our owners. And especially if it's bulk, providers will pay more for bulk agreements, because remember, they're getting guaranteed revenue from the owner of the property. But non-bulk agreements, just access agreements, you can be looking at $200-$300 a door, and it's almost like if you don't ask, and if you don't know that you should be asking, or if you just assume, if the provider says, yeah, I'll give you $50 a door, if you're like, okay, well, that seems okay. If you don't know that you should be asking for more compensation, negotiate, right? So it's like buying anything, buying a house, buying a piece of real estate. Your investors negotiate prices, right? You should be negotiating those types of terms for access and for rights, because those are very valuable. So start doing the math. If you have even several hundred units, you're looking at several thousands of dollars that if you don't ask and you don't negotiate, or if you don't insist up front, you're just kind of leaving that money out there. So door fees and upfront payments are the very first thing you want to make sure that you're going after. Secondly would be revenue share. Well, first of all, the upfront payments, those are just one-time payments, and they usually arrive anywhere from 30 to 90 days after both parties execute a contract. Then you can see your door fee check show up to you, and that's just going to be one time. And it goes to you. If you sell that property in 5 years, you don't have to give that door fee to the buyer of the property. That's your money.
And how long are these agreements typically? Are they
5 to 10 years?
5 to 10.
Yeah, your non-bulk agreements are typically closer to 10 or around 10 years. Your bulk agreements are typically around half that, about 5. The reason why bulk agreements would be less is because technology changes, right? And quite frankly, the provider doesn't want to really be held to that rate, even though they're guaranteed for 5 years. They want the ability after 5 years, and hopefully if they've done a good job serving you and your residents, that you'll renew that they have the ability to change that rate or increase that rate after, say, a 5 or 7 year term. So on the revenue share side, those are ongoing payments that you'll receive throughout the term of the agreement, 5, 10 years, 7 year, whatever that is. And that is a percentage of the number of customers based on the type of service. So I'll give you an example. So let's say you receive a 5% revenue share, which really isn't that much, but I'll just use that as a rule of thumb. So if and these are all hypothetical numbers, right? So if your property, you have 100 units, and let's say you're at 100% occupancy, and say out of those 100 units, only 30 of them have video service from the provider. 60 of them have internet, and only 5 of them have phone. So what the provider will do is pay you 5% of what they call the penetration. So if your penetration is 30% on video, you'll get 5% of that and 5% of the internet and the phone. So it's all calculated usually individually by service. And then those checks would come to you. They're typically quarterly. And then that's just like getting, like in investing, you get a residual, or an investment. You're getting your money throughout the term of that investment back. Could be on an ongoing basis. Investing is all about passive income, right? And getting that passive income coming in. And this really is pretty much like that. In a sense, this is passive income. You're not really doing anything. The provider's already on the property anyway. You're just taking advantage of the situation with them being there. And by taking advantage, I don't mean in a bad way. You're just leveraging that situation, and you're creating additional revenue, passive income that comes into the property. And then the third way, which is not really monetary compensation in a direct way, but more indirect way, would be courtesy accounts, or what they call complimentary accounts. And you can negotiate those. Most providers require that you have to have at least 100 units before they will give out courtesy accounts, but that would be free cable and internet to be used on site. They used to, way back in the day, if a property owner had the cable at home, then they would give them free cable in their home. They did away with those a long time ago. So they're really more for on-site or on-premise use. Maybe you have a common area. You have an on-site manager or maintenance person that works or that lives on site. You can negotiate getting free cable and internet for them. So again, those are things, if you don't know, you don't know. You don't know to ask, but you should be trying to get those complimentary or courtesy services for your property as well, and getting as many of those as you can. On the bulk side, if you're providing bulk service, it's about making sure that the rate that you're getting from the provider obviously is as low as possible. Making sure that the rate increase, because they'll build in a rate increase just like your residential service. Rate increases in the cable business happen once a year, and that's pretty much all providers. Every January, you get an annual rate increase, and that's typically about 6% on the retail side. On the bulk side, you want to negotiate that down to maybe 2 or 3%. So you're not getting hit with these rate increases. Because that right there, John, can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars by just 1 or 2%, especially if you have hundreds or thousands of units that are bulk. Another way to make sure that you're saving money and monetizing that and increasing your overall NOI because you're not paying out as much in cable, right?
Yeah, no, Todd, those are great points there. I mean, just to recap, the 3 ways you monetize your telecommunications service with that provider. First and foremost, that upfront or door fee, making sure you're getting compensated upfront, that one-time payment for the number of doors, you're getting that check. That's a great way to, boost immediate returns that year, but as well as get some great cash flow going. The second way is a revenue sharing model, which, is every year you get that based on the number of residents, the packages that they buy, and, build that on. And that's a part of the NOI that's going to drive your net operating income and actually not just add to the bottom line today, but actually increase the value of the property overall because it is driving the NOI. And then the third is these courtesy accounts. So maybe, you can use this for, the on-site managers, or, if you have kind of a shared facility, fitness room, anything like that,
Yep.
You can use these courtesy accounts there. So great intel. I want to transition. I know you talked a lot about, this is really important if people are looking to go down this pathway. Knowledge is key when trying to approach these telecommunications companies and negotiating with them. And I know that this is something that you now offer as a service. Can you briefly just highlight, your consulting firm and what you do there? And then I want to talk about some other things in this space.
Yeah. So MDU Consulting Group is the name of our company. MDUconsultinggroup.com. You can go to our website. You can email me, tthorpe at mduconsultinggroup.com. One thing that we do offer as a free service is we will analyze your current situation, your current contracts, your portfolio, whether you have one property, you have 5, or you have 500 properties. We will analyze those for you, see if you have an opportunity to leverage those contracts right now, and do you have any revenue opportunities? If you are in an agreement and there's not much wiggle room, then you'll have to wait until that agreement comes up for expiration before you can look to renew it. But we'll look at that for you. And again, there's no charge or obligation to do that, or we can give you some feedback if you have any opportunities. If you're getting ready to buy a property, we can help you with that as well. Obviously, we can't look at any financials probably until you've purchased the property because of confidentiality. But that's another thing you want to make sure when you are getting ready to purchase a property. Do your due diligence. I know investors, and I see this a lot. You guys are very, very big on doing due diligence. Make sure you check to see if there's an agreement in place, what that agreement's going to obligate you, just like all of your contracts, waste haul, snow plowing, if you're up in the northern states, any other utility agreements, cell tower, all of that. Cable agreements are the same thing. So you want to kind of do your research there, but we can help you with all of that information, and kind of steer you in the right direction and just kind of give you some advice.
Yeah, you were starting to just talk about other contract services. That's actually where I wanted to go next.
Yeah.
We talked about
segue, right?
Yeah, you did great. Man. I don't know if you're reading my notes here or what, but as we think about broadening this conversation up, right? We've obviously talked a lot about wireless technology and internet and cable, but we also think about things like laundry income.
Yeah.
You talked about
Absolutely.
so many other things that you just started to hit on, and in particular, when we think about these agreements, a lot of times we can either renegotiate or try to reduce the rates for expenses that we're paying for. But if any of these things are revenue generating, I'll go back to laundry. A lot of times, especially here in kind of the Midwest, there are, coin operated companies that will put in washer and dryer. They have a set rate or a set profit share split. as far as what they
Yep.
get. And, a lot of times when people are buying, they're not really looking at these contracts. They're not really understanding what's in them, the length of terms, what the split is, and then not knowing what they can actually negotiate. As you look at value add services and opportunities in the contract services with multifamily, what are some of the challenges, some of the areas you think investors can get better at?
Well, first of all, just knowing what you can and can't do. Reaching out to your peers is a great resource. It being involved in the multifamily organizations out there, attending apartment association meetings, belonging to those association meetings, going to seminars where you see property management companies and owners gathering together, and you can get a lot of that information, which will help educate you on what you can and can't do. So I think that's the first place. Knowledge is power, right, John? So the more you know and you arm yourself with that, the better off you'll be. So when this comes up, you're not caught off guard. The biggest advice I can give all of your listeners, number one piece of advice is be organized when it comes to your portfolio. Even if you just have a few properties, you don't need some big expensive CRM database to do it. Just an Excel spreadsheet, list out your properties, the types of contracts that you have. Could be telecommunication, could be laundry, could be snowplow, all of those. What dates are those expirations coming up? What are they? What terms do you currently have today? And kind of be on guard. You can be looking ahead and be ready when that contract is coming up for renewal. My alarm contract in my house, I know when that's going to come up for renewal. I might be looking at a new provider. I might be staying where I'm at, right? So you just kind of want to be ahead of the game because contracts will automatically renew. And if you don't give notice, that's the other big thing. Make sure that you're giving proper notice, and we can help you with that. Then you're stuck. And now that contract just automatically renewed again for another year or 3 years or whatever the contract said. So the key is being prepared and kind of having a good, just simple spreadsheet of everything. And then the second thing is making sure that you're giving yourself enough time. Because if you lose that window, now you've just kind of gone into that renewal period. Now you're stuck. So be organized, database your portfolio, simple spreadsheet, and then give yourself enough time.
No, great points there. Appreciate that. Let's move on to our bullseye round. You ready?
All right. I am ready. Yes.
Give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
I would have to say not being prepared when it comes to having an exit plan from my corporate career. I guess relying on my corporate career to take care of my needs financially and personally, which this consultant business has kind of allowed me to do. So me not listening to my own advice, planning, I guess, right? Yeah.
There you go. Hey, it happens to a lot of people, right? That's something that I think most Americans struggle with. That's why we also do this, this show and push everybody to create multiple streams of income so you can have flexibility and some exit strategies to transition to the next phase of life. All right. Hey, give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
Target Market Insights podcast.
I appreciate the shameless plug there. Appreciate that.
and John didn't pay me for that, by the way. But no, seriously, I would have to say podcasts for sure, because I know I've always, known podcasts are out there, but I would have to say as of late, I've really been spending more time listening, and you can pretty much learn anything and everything there is out there by listening to a podcast.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
That would have to be Contagious by Jonah Berger. And it's a marketing book, and it talks about why things catch on. It's a great book. You can read it in, a few hours. It's like 250 pages. I highly recommend, regardless of the industry you're in, read it. It's written in just a very, very kind of approachable format. So yes, Contagious by Jonah Berger.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
I start the day every day with prayer, kind of giving thanks, being grateful for what I truly have, and trying to achieve what they call unconditional happiness, regardless of your circumstances. So that's, get your day started right, and then usually the rest of the day goes well.
What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
Real estate investing. So one thing, and how I kind of was talking to you is, I wish I would have known more about real estate investing years ago, and becoming a passive investor and maybe a syndicator. So because of the relationship that I have with the multifamily space, that's one thing that I want to start exploring now. As I'm kind of pushing 60, I want to be able to retire and have that passive income. And I truly believe, listening to you and others, that passive investing in multifamily real estate is the way to go.
All right, you are out in Greenville, South Carolina.
Yes.
I want you to give me the best place to grab a bite.
Kitchen Sink, and that's Sink, SYNC, the Kitchen Sink. And they are recognized nationally as, I think, the #1 sustainable restaurant. Everything is farm to table, but, recycling water and just very energy conscious. Kitchen Sink.
All right, we'll have to check that out. We definitely need to put that on the list next time we're in Greenville.
Yeah.
All right. This has been really educational. As we talk about value add strategies, a lot of times people focus so much on interior renovations, but looking at contracts, in particular telecommunications, with internet and so many people working from home right now, that home office space is big. Looking at maybe providing internet services and working with these telecom companies could be a great way to add an amenity that renters are looking for, as well as driving more profits to the NOI. Todd, you gave us your information before. Why don't you give it to us one more time? How can our listeners get in touch with you?
Yep, John, they can go to MDUconsultinggroup.com, or they can reach out to me via email, tthorpe@MDUconsultinggroup.com, or look me up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active, and send me a direct message and be happy to connect.
Todd, thank you for coming on Target Market Insights, the Multifamily Marketing Show. We hope you have a great day. Talk soon.
Thanks, John. You too.